Working as a counselling psychologist, I've done a lot of crisis management work, one-to-one with people. I worked for a time as a Samaritan volunteer on a helpline, and I myself have been suicidal 2 or 3 times. And I guess I had to think very carefully about how important it is to try to help someone past that sense of crisis. Sometimes it's not life they want to end. In fact, usually it's not life they want to end, it's pain. But life gives you a second chance. The light at the end of the tunnel is quite often the oncoming train, but it needn't be. We're not necessarily going to find things are worse, and taking things a day at a time helps you get by. So the important thing is to diminish an enormous problem into bite-sized chunks so you can deal with it. Not to think pain is forever, to think past pain. I read quite a lot of feminist literature, and of course Virginia Woolf featured, and I used to be a member of the National Trust and went down to see her house in Rodmell, and of course Woolf committed suicide by putting stones in her pockets and drowned herself in the ooze. She probably was bipolar, but who knows. It's quite clear that she meant to die, and they found her body near Piddinghoe. And I wrote this poem called Rodmell Girls. Virginia Woolf, the she-wolf bitch, was she Madonna, virgin, hag or witch? A gender warrior, she made some fearful, yet vulnerable in her raging fear of her own sadness. She sought an end of that pain when she walked into the river Ouse, her large pockets filled with flint stones she'd chosen, or found, or been given. We each have such stones which we carry. They're our own madness, our sadness, as we walk wearily towards those cold, grey, drowning rivers to try for an escape. These stones can be marked love me, should do, ought to, emptiness, different, despair. They stop us from running, flying or swimming, so toothless we sink, drowning in black despair. Throw them away, watch them bounce on the waves, sink them, wave goodbye to these heavy weights, and choose life. So, that's Rodmell Girls. Sadly, my dear son Ben was schizophrenic, and he had voices and everything. It probably started when he was given some drug on holiday in Spain. He came back, had to be sectioned, and had periods where he was hearing really frightening voices, and they were as real to him as anything. And his schizophrenia came and went, and the trouble was when he was recovering on his medications, the medications have horrible side effects. They make you slobber and do this, and your knees and hands wobble, and the medications are side effects are pretty vile, so I don't blame people for stopping taking them. But the trouble is, if you are schizophrenic or bipolar, the medications do help. If you stop taking them, things get bad again. And Ben had been in love with a very beautiful girl. Horrifyingly, this girl was a single mother, heroin addict and schizophrenic. And Ben had said to me, you know, we're going to get married. And I thought, dear God, if they get married, their baby will be born in crazy circumstances, could well be born a heroin addict. And I was worried sick. I was always worried about Ben, frightened for him, never frightened of him. He was so sweet. He was a bit of a savant, actually. I took him to a jazz club, the Concord, where Art Hodez was playing. And this Art Hodez is a guy who played with Louis Armstrong. He's one of the real old jazz greats. And Art Hodez played a lot of boogie-woogies. And Ben loved it. And when we got home, he'd never had a music lesson in his life, couldn't read music or anything. He manically went at it on my piano and played and played and played, day and night. It was driving me bonkers. After about 2 or 3 weeks, he was pretty good. And it ended up that he got a job in a pub, part-time, playing honky-tonk piano. He was earning £12 an hour, while I was a ward sister earning £10 an hour. Anyway, he was a savant, obviously. And he'd come to me and said, I've written this new song, and on it would be word jumping cat. I said, yes. All he'd do was write the title on a piece of paper, and he'd solemnly take the piece of paper and put it on the piano with the word, and play the chords and get the song started. And he'd got, you know, endless bits of paper with a word on them, and that was his song sheets, and off he went. And he was really good. One time when he was on section at the Royal Bethlehem, it's near Dulwich, I took him out for a 2-hour day release, and we went to Dulwich Art Gallery. It's a free gallery and it's beautiful, and I thought he'd be interested, and he was interested. We looked at all the paintings. It's a really fine collection. It's an extraordinary building. It was, I think, the first purpose-built art gallery in the UK. At the end of the gallery, the long corridor, was a very large object covered in a purple sheet with a big notice, do not touch. Ben walked straight up to it, recognising the shape, tore this cover off and sat down. Of course, it was not just a grand piano, it was an imperial piano with an extra half octave, and started to play. And the guards all sort of came forward and stopped, and all the people in the gallery stopped, and he's playing away, and when he'd finished he turned round and grinned. Everybody clapped, so he played again, and he did 3 or 4 of his boogies, and people really loved it. And people said thank you, and Ben took a little bow, and we walked outside, and I sat on the grass. I felt so happy, because my son wasn't a balmy boy anymore. He was a musician. I was really proud of him. Anyway, the awful thing is he'd fallen in love with this girl, and they went to a party. He'd stopped taking his medication, and she danced with somebody else. He lost his cool. He went up to the top of the building at the bottom of Trafalgar Street and jumped, and his chest hit some iron railings which were to stop pedestrians crossing the road, and it smashed his thorax, and he died almost instantly. I'd worked in casualty, of course, and in casualty or off casualty, or in the hospital, there's a room which they call the quiet room, which is next to the chapel, where you take people to tell them, you know, we're terribly sorry, we think this might be your son, your husband, your mother, where they have to identify the person they love who's just died. And I'd taken people to the quiet room myself, and it's a quiet room in which you really need to scream, but you don't, but your soul screams. And I wrote this poem after Ben died, called The Quiet Room, and it still makes me want to cry. Not my words, but the experience. I see him, not a bed, not a table on which he lies to attention. He seems tall now, skin cooling, starting to blue. I seek his hand, find it loose but clenched. I see his grazed knuckles, touch those so long fingers. So long, my child. Respectfully, they'd put him in a hospital shroud, as I have so many others, hating the plastic frills. His face is calm above the fresh white sheet, undamaged and quite still. He needs a shave. I carefully and with love tuck him in this last time. In the breathless silence, now he asks no questions. I have no answers. Now I ask the questions. It's complete. He's dead. I brush my son's hair. God bless you, Ben. Nobody should lose a child. It's strange when Ben was ill, his personality changed quite radically, and my dog Ollie sort of recognised that. I used to take Ben to St Answell Gardens when he was in a home just off that area in Hove. This poem's called Spaced in Loss. His long blonde hair hangs about his face. It's thin, eyes deep set, medicated. Drug therapy does this as powerfully as the illness. He's untidily dressed, trousers undone. His trainers look too small and falling to bits. There are stains on his jeans and t-shirt. He hasn't shaved the boyish fuzz from his chin. Anger and pain, hysteria, false laughter, drowsiness, the trembling fingers, the rocking, knees vibrating, hands gripping, sharp words roll out. He paces to and fro. He knows he's lost. He wants answers, a cure for this feeling now. In the park he demands attention, rejects advice. Our dog, wagging his tail, slowly stares at him. He smells the same, he looks the same, but who is he now? As dealing with a child who's that ill is utterly exhausting and difficult, and anybody who has somebody mentally ill in the family needs support as much as the person who's ill, because it is so exhausting. Having said that, I do feel very grateful for the time I shared with my mad son, Ben. I wondered if I was mad. I think some people think I'm eccentric. I cannot understand it. I mean, what's eccentric about living with fossils? I'll show you my passion. Where is it? Oh, I can't lift that one. I haven't got the strength. Oh dear. Here we are. Yeah. This is an ammonite. Now, I read geology at uni. I did a geology A-level. I fell in love with fossil hunting because it's a sort of magical treasure hunt. And what you find, you keep. So it's something that is magical, that is very ancient, something that has never been seen by anybody before. Something that, however old you are, you know that you're miles younger than it. This chap is about 150 million years old. So how old is 70? Nothing at all. Anyway, ammonites are a type of cephalopod, which is to say in the octopus, squid, cuttlefish group. They all became extinct at the same time as the dinosaurs, and they all are based on a spiral shell with a squid-like little critter living inside. And I thought, well, I can't collect every type of fossil there are, because of course there are millions and millions. I'll specialise in one type of thing. I'll specialise in ammonites. And that was before I realised there are actually something like 4,500 genera, let alone species. I now have a collection which is taking over my whole house, and you know that I've stopped having parties because the fossils are taking up so much room. It's a bit over the top, people might say, and the collection, since I retired, my plan was to spend time doing geology, because it forces you to get outside and to enjoy the countryside. There's the exploration thing, there's then the joy of preparing the fossil, and well, of course with lost mobility, the preparing rather than the finding became more significant. And you'll probably see at some point in this film what used to be the room in which I had parties has now been taken over completely as a fossil museum, an ammonite museum, because I've got about 4,000 different species, let alone specimens. There's still a long way to go, but I think I'm running out of space. On the other hand, I don't care. Long after I'm dead and gone, the fossils that I prepared will last, hopefully, forever. My words might last for a short time, but I think it's probably the same thing as a sculptor or a painter feels. There's a big element of creativity when you cut with tiny chisels and clear away the matrix from a fossil. You're revealing something in the rock, and you're in a sense being artistic as well as scientific. And because it's stone, it won't be destroyed even if there was a house fire. So I'm really, really hooked on fossils. I just wish I had a bigger house where I could store more. People say, why don't you sell them? And the trouble is, they're old friends, you know, and it's difficult. I do sell them from time to time, and I suppose I should sell some, but while I'm here, I'm enjoying them. Anyway, I talk too much. What shall we do? I'll do another countryside piece. This piece is called September. I know we're in June now. The hopes of May's blooms are turned to seeds. Fallen apples rot on the ground, sweet and ripe. Invertebrates feed, multiply, and fill the air and ground. Spring is the time for mammals, save man, the all-rounder. Fecund nature revels in its success before winter's ravages. Multitudes of greens grow and glow over the countryside. A day comes with a chill and a hint of frost in the morning air. Leaves begin to fall before the trees are browned off with summer. Yet, as they fall, new buds already await next spring. How fortunate we are! Our Mother Nature gave us seasons to section our air and bring hope with the new year. In 9 months our year has gone almost full term. The cold seas are grown almost warm enough for swimming. The blue waters become brown and grey in autumn light. Yellow sunsets replace the orange of summer. The heat's gone, and a slate sea mist drifts into the shore up a downland valley. A monochrome weald awakens to a September morning, and wood smoke curls from country cottages, and bonfires scent the air. In woodland, late summer blooms still flower from hopeful buds behind the downland cousins, seeking the sun almost too late. Early holly berries show ready for Christmas picking, whilst rosehips, blackberries and nightshades peep through remaining hedgerows. Nests vacated, birds consider moving on, save the starlings and pigeons in their city roosts, chattering loudly by takeaways and winter plans. Featureless grey skies sometimes give way to Indian summers, but unfooled fungi cling to dead wood, spores exploded to disperse. At night the air is heady with the scent of wood and soil and plants. The sky, filled with shooting stars, is clear and crisp if unclouded. September's the end of the beginning of the year, and is the beginning of the end. Autumn equinox promising Beltane. So that's September. I've just realised it's actually July, not June. It shows you how dithery I can be. Anyway, this is a poem I wrote about November. There aren't a full 12 monthly poems, but anyway, this is a November one. I do like the seasons. There's always something to look forward to, or dread. November. It's time to close the garden. The frosts of November have come. Last mowing done, leaves cleared away, flower pots inside, seeds all gathered. The snails and slugs and toads, large for winter, huddle under things. Ready, late blooms surprise us. The pink rose still scents sweet of summer. All pruned, weeds cleared, soil laid bare, bonfire twigs burnt, smoky ash spread. All tidied, polite, ready for the snows, the ground dug clear, cut flowers bought now. Plants need no weather forecast, leaves fall when they're ready. The blossoms, nature's summer's dresses, are folded away for next time. So that's November. Well, we're now in the month of July, and I thought it was June. Anyway, this is a poem I called Golden June, and it's, well, it should speak for itself, I hope. Topless in June sunshine, lovers snug on a rug, golden wine, warm bodies, the poem of her breasts. Notebook open, her recorded recollections of the surreal, painful reality taking place, the push for shared pain. Minds engage the problem, as though it could be solved by understanding alone. We're frightened children. Comfort in each other's arms, dreamy kisses dispel despair, are more real than blame, more relevant than before. Driving the one she needs away, forgetting or she still gives so much, but who could not delight this woman in her prime? So here's a space for us, a still moment of magic, a memory for us to share, a golden time in my soul. So, Golden June, it's not really about the month, it's about peace and beauty and loving a good woman. Everybody should love a good woman. You'll forgive the lesbianism, I hope. I'll read another one which fits in, and then I think, well, we'll see what happens, shall we? Oh, Susie's just come in. Susie, I'm calling a deaf cat. Now, how silly is that? Oh dear. Yes, this poem, some people love, and it makes some people feel a bit uncomfortable. It's called Dancing to a Different Tune. We danced to a Beethoven quintet, a classical minuet, in stocking feet, taped incongruity in a darkening room. Candlelights flicker. On plays the music, touching us with its mind and melody. Nervous fingers undo my clothes. She's never undressed another woman before. Each forbidden revelation delights. Breasts touch, sweep across each other, nipples erect. Too soon for each. We agree a contract must not love. Smiling open eyes search for clues. What should I do? She asks directly. It's easy. You do what you like. She likes everything. Talks it through. The delight. Singing, sobs, curved movements. So long leaves it, not going for the jugular. Teasing through covering clothes and then under. Stroking thighs, behind knees, under arms, necks, even elbows. An exploration of mirrored movements. Turn taking, again and again. wet before we start, gentle fingers deep inside, flickering, stroking, probing, holding, rubbing, no mistakes. Each takes and gives a sexual release, startling both again and again. We come again, we sing. Naked on the floor, golden bodies in candlelight. She's a carer, knows words can be bullets, thinks, makes me feel whole and confident. Not in love, we really like each other. She feels my whole inside, outside stress, knows to caress. Oh, what can I do? Surely she loves it too? I'm sorry it is blatantly lesbian, but it's true. And that's important. Oh yes, this one fits in a little bit. I'm a child of the 60s to an extent, and I wrote this one called Video Life. If life were a video recorder, I'd record only the good bits and erase or leave out the bad. I'd stop screen violence. I'd fast forward the bores and materialist adventures. I'd keep tape after tape of you. If life were a video camera, I'd film beauty and nature. I'd edit away all the dross and zoom in on our love. I'd soft focus life blemishes, faults in human nature. I'd record all your moods. If life were a videotape, I'd play it again and again, and I'd replay for a happy childhood. I'd keep my parents happy together. I'd ensure that love was forever. I'd see that God was really kind, always answering good prayers. I'd wipe out all aging and illness. If life were a video film, I'd not buy images of mad politicians. I'd hire only free thoughts. I'd marvel at life, I'd show it to you, knowing you love goodness. I'd see only justice on earth. If life were a video life, I'd fill it to the full, the good and the bad. I'd learn from my mistakes. I'd not feel erased. I'd not be depressed, drinking life's gift joyfully, undaunted, unhaunted by your having gone. If life were a video recorder. Too many of my poems do end on a, okay, I'll survive through sadness, and I suppose that is in a way a story of many people's lives. It's certainly my story. Perhaps I'll do one more and then maybe move to another room. I'm lucky to have more than one room to move in, aren't I? What shall I do? What shall I do? Oh yes, I find one of my poems that I used to read at Nobles and other places, it makes the men feel uncomfortable. I'm told it's rude, and it's not at all rude. It's called It Was Hard. My fingers lifted it to my lips. It was hard and yet soft, smelt forbidden, dreadful but inviting. It was straight and long. He said he wanted me to do it. I placed the end in my mouth, holding it between my right thumb and forefinger. My hand shook, my pulse quickened. I withdrew it, touched the end with my tongue, tasted it. I wanted to take it in as I once used to do. Held securely in my mouth, I sucked at it as he lit the filter tip. God, it was good to have a cigarette again. Thank you. When we're young, we always look forward to getting older, grown up, you know, you're allowed to go into the pub to see the X film or whatever, to vote. And of course, as we get older, life becomes a situation where we wish we weren't getting older. I wrote this poem. It's called I Wet Myself. I wet myself the other day. It just happened. I was washing the dishes and it just happened all down my legs. I must learn not to leave saucepans full of water at an angle. The next one, I've heard it said. Now, I've always been a bit on the heavy side, particularly since the arthritis kicked in. And so I'm conscious of the fact that I'm larger than most supermodels, rather a lot larger. Larger than I would like to be anyway. And this poem's called I've Heard It Said. I've heard it said that we grow through suffering, and perhaps that's why I'm fat. Yet the plump have large personalities in general, and empty hearts in particular. We're cuddly and laugh a lot at ourselves, not at underdogs, for we're the underdogs in a world of slim credibility. In Arabia, a plump woman is considered beautiful, but who likes sheikhs, camels and sand? No, chocolate is more reliable. This one is called in Japan. I used to have a Japanese student staying here, Makoto Yamakawa, lovely guy. But I did notice, as we all do, that they can't pronounce the letter L. And so a whole series of problems arose with the use of the Japanese pronunciation of L. And it's called in Japan. In Japan, they cannot properly pronounce their L's, so they don't have the tedium of general elections. In their general erections, they boast of their amazing erection promises and manifestos. The streets have hoardings where each party proclaims that its erection is vital for the good of the nation. We all know how little will be the satisfaction of the people once the erection's over. Of course, once erected, the promise is soon lost, and the post-erection debate begins. Firm action was promised, but all the effort of the election campaign is seen as the disappointment it really was. The head of the party will of course be the Prime Minister-elect, and once elected, he'll lead the mass debate against the opposition, and waste energy pointing a finger at them, unless of course it's a hung parliament. Clearly, Japanese elections are as disappointing as those in England. Indeed, worldwide, there's nothing but letdown. In many countries they don't even have elections, just a man in charge, and I suppose that's even worse. Perhaps if women ruled the world, there'd then be just votes for women, and I'd cheerfully vote then, and there'd be no erection lies, and the women would know not to hope too much from any erection, general or otherwise. Sorry, gentlemen. Now, the business of roadkills, and not being a vegetarian, being an omnivore. Some years ago I was talking at a conference at the University of East Anglia in Norwich, and on the way back this happened. It's called Out for a Duck. Grey afternoon drizzle on wind-whipped waters, ochre, wet, impenetrable to light, licking the shore. Mallards moved towards our bread, Norfolk Broads, this autumn afternoon. Boats tied along shoreline, empty of tourists, windmills still in the distance, double sails. We wide-eyed see the sky, wet wind-washed walls of broken flints, ice-aged and timeless. Seasons slip by, swans neck towards us. They cautiously feed from our nervous hands. I'm conscious of the dead duck in the boot of the car which a fellow motorist hit. This drake with iridescent green neck, fine feathered thoughts only of his mate. Out for a duck, now for our pot, a sauce to enrich him. I feel ashamed of our cautious, carnivorous practicality. Somewhat sad-eyed, we consider an orange sauce a good idea. Beneath those gorgeous feathers, a duck is quite small. He'd bowled his last maiden over, never ducked in time, and soundless. This wildlife has ended. The swans look quite big. Roadkills can be a very good source of a good meal. On one occasion I found 2 pheasants and had a great dinner party. It's practical, I suppose. I draw the line though at eating little old ladies. One thing I've always enjoyed is watching amateur dramatics. I can never act because I can't remember lines, having zero memory. But a dear friend of mine, Anita, is in various theatre groups and is really a fine actress. And I went to see her in one of her plays in Saltdean. It's called The Local Players. A friend and I went to see The Local Players. I remember Mama, it's a weepy. Most of the audience on the second night, had zimmered their way to the theatre hall. It was wrapped in its best banality. There were 2 shows, one excellent on stage, the other in the row in front of us. A trio of old widows, the fattest and youngest in the middle. She had a faded plastic flower in her dyed hair. On her left, part sighted, part deaf, 90. On her right, still as death, a corpse-like crone, sat silently. Perhaps she died before the show, or had been there since the previous performance. Fat Lady talked of the young men she fancied. Her older companion had stopped hoping or seeing. The play began. "It's her, ain't she lovely?" Our commentator talked on, delighted each time she saw a woman she thought she knew in the play. The interval came. Sticks and frames clicked into action, a race for the 30p cuppa and biscuits. Thin Lady asked Fat Lady, "Who's the man you come with?" Fat Lady turned to look at him. "That ain't a man, it's me son." He shuffled nervously after 50 years a mother's boy. "Who's the man beside him?" "That ain't a man, it's a lady." They both stared at the short-haired woman in the aisle seat. In the world of their own, the elderly have realities which are different and of little consequence, just like the play. Jumble sales and bingo and a night out matter. It was their big night out, a treat and real theatre. The dead lady hurried out, past us as we left. Local players. I do think it's important that people get out of their nursing homes, out of their bedrooms, and be with other people. Now, what shall I read next? I don't know. I apologise for the times when I'm searching through this superb anthology, looking for something sensible to read. Oh yes. For a time, I had a brief time when I had no dog. Now I've got a long period with no dog, and I find that very difficult. But my principle has always been to try to find a rescue dog. My very first own dog was called Oliver, and he was born on Christmas Eve on my bed. I got back from midnight mass to find 4 live little cocker spaniel poodle crosses, spoodles, on my bed, and one that looked dead, and this tiny little one, the runt. I blew into its mouth and rubbed its chest, and it came to life. And I asked my parents, I was 15, if I could keep him. They said yes, yes. So I named him, and I named him Oliver, because as he walked, he twisted his body, and he and I became inseparable. He lived to be 20 and was a wonderful dog. When he died, I was heartbroken, and of course I had to get another dog, and obviously I wanted another spoodle, preferably black, like Oliver. So I went to the RSPCA to see if I could find another spoodle, and I didn't. Of course, what happens when you go looking for a dog, a rescue dog, they choose you. One of these little guys comes up, whole body shaking, wagging tail, saying, "Love me, love me, love me," you know. And this little guy came up to me, and we fell for each other, and I had to have him. So this dog was going to be Oliver II. First seen shivering, fearful in a filthy cage, this pup, starved, skinny, eyes stuck with dry tears, man-wrecked, tortured, terrified. We both rage, this cringing young life almost maimed by fear. A hand offered, dog cowers, oceans in deep brown eyes, seeing his pain, knowing my own, I feel our ties. Both were hurt, alone, unnerved, must reclaim trust, loving again, patiently, gently. We must! We must! Door opened, he bolts from the ghosts of his past, plays catch me if you can. He was too fast, shy even to feed until hunger drew him in. He began to know he had his space, he had his tin. On South Downs way to Chanctonbury became a real hound. He'd sniffed, he'd peed, lurched and leapt over the ground, watching me, now his top dog, aware where I strode, circling to and fro, round and round, peripheral to my road. Tired, lying in grassy bed, green all round, skylarks blew above the soil-scented ground, feeling a shape, a warm, panting thing pressed against me. I saw his eyes shining, heart on wing. He lay beside me that first time, and so many more. Learnt to trust, to come when hungry or hurt, and to adore. Fed from my hand and my heart, and gave me such welcome. He'd be waiting my return, tail wagging, to see his mum, asleep on chair or bed, knowing no danger with me there. Others came and all changed. Still a while he'd stare, gauging if things were safe, if he might be given space. He'd smell the hand, the legs, seek danger in the face. Chocolate overcame most fear, a genuine joy. Paw raised, he'd beg and receive. Oh, clever boy! He could sit, heel, stay down, go down and smile. He drank real ale, would sneeze, tipsy a while. I used to take him to the folk club, and in fact he got banned from the Laughing Fish for stealing somebody's beer while I was singing. Dear old Oliver. Well, all three Olivers were darling animals. God, how can anyone live without a dog? It's extraordinary. Oh dear. Well, what shall I read now? A couple more, perhaps. I mean, some of the poetry I've written is political. This one is really not from experience, it's from reading, not from personal experience. I read some excerpts from a diary which was written on January the 17th, 1945. I read a translated version of this. It's called Juden des Ghettosti. Rifle butts against the door. They have come. Go to the right, they shout. I go there. Other people come, but they're not my parents. First snow, 12 noon, cold. It's easier to fill an empty stomach than an empty stove. The ghetto is dirty, white, like the frozen dead. Rumours about what happened to the children. We pray for a miracle. Only a miracle can save us. Why are we in this place? Will there ever be tomorrow? There's nowhere like this anywhere. Come and save us, we only want to live. There is no justice left in the world, less in the ghetto. The Jewish police stay fat. Now we hate them more than the Germans, yet nobody fights back. Like them, we're the servants of the authorities. They are only obeying orders. At last we see deliverance. Where to go? The trains will take us from the ghetto. We're to be moved from this hell. 80 to a wagon. Some died. Our lives, our hopes are shattered. God had deserted his children. Delivery came in a place called Auschwitz. This one, in a sense, is about an atrocity. It's about how we white people, with all our gifts and wealth and money and education, are destroying one culture after another and replacing it with Western capitalism. It's called Gaguju land. 40,000 years, continuity is ending. Dream time has come. The living have lost their heritage. 3 old men remain, custodians, keeper of the sacred ceremonies, workers in the art prayers, hand-stenciled signatures, their sign of immortality. Sacred places, burial rituals, walkabouts, song cycles of creator beings remembered and spoken, paintings of ancestral animals, songs to the Australian desert. No knowledge is written down. It survives in them alone and is spoken to unbelievers. These, the custodians of the land, know better than we. They came at once, mortal and sacred, natural and supernatural. Their monument is harmony with nature. What man owns changes. It scars the land. No animal, no plant, no man is safe. In the beginning of the dream time, long ago, Inoju showed the Gajuguju people what to do. He focused the life force, and now he lives in a great rock. Could even he be snatched by the great seagull back to the dream time, far away from his people? We really don't understand what we do when we mine, when we plant fences in wild countryside, when we tell people what they believe, how they live is wrong. They should wear trousers. They should learn to be Europeans. What an insult. I'm all for a multicultural, multidimensional, rich world. A world where difference is good. And sadly, it's difficult for many people to accept difference. I think, actually, all extremists should be shot. Anyway, enough of politics. I'll do a couple more, shall I? Well, this is vaguely political. Country folk. Times moved on and we didn't. Those who moved on moved away, and newcomers came and took up the old empty ivied cottages, restored their comfortable ingle-nook kitchens and bathrooms. Why, we replumbed and rewired. It's good as new, but what a view! In their gardens they grow roses, herbs and hollyhocks. Picture the double-glazed window cottage, centrally heated, mock-tutored, secure, respectable, with burglar alarms and pine furniture, with their gleaming garage vehicles, the Porsche, the Range Rover, their green wellies by the door, microwaving at the lie of all this. A Victorian, Laura Ashley view of how it really wasn't for country folk. They weekend, some go for healthy walks, eat health foods, make elderberry wine, go through life isolated from rural reality and us. Part-time villagers, their eyes stay faxed to the ground, tied to the city. In their inorganic lives, unearthed by city upbringing, they wipe the good land's soils from their shiny shoes. Our wellies were black, scratched and caked in old muds. Our words are slow and few, save at home round the fire of logs that we cut. We never locked our doors, had nothing to steal. Everything and everyone all had their place. Our cottages were crammed with children, not things. Our world was the village, our ruler was the seasons. The black dark nights are now illuminated by outside lights, lighting nobody's way to anywhere. The dreadful dream shadows are gone like the cobwebs which filled our pre-TV nighttime stories told around dusty grates, with ash still aglow, small flickering yellow and blue flame-filled places in our prehistoric imaginations. No book or gadgets, or learning, or time was spent listening. Make no music. People died in these, our little homes. Children were born, but many were lost to us. As tenants or farm workers, there were no mod cons. Those from the big house sometimes brought a basket of cast-off clothes, a little food, essential charity. Forelocks were touched. We knew our place. Encapsulated, they, like us, remain frozen, like goldfish trapped in the ice of a too shallow winter pond. It is said that heaven is a place where life resumes. Then now the village is a place where life presumes. A Bronze Age man has been found frozen in the Alps. Country folk, where then can we find what he thought? It is sad in a way that the countryside has become a place for people to live, only rich people to live. And it is a rather frightening idea that we might concrete over the whole of the countryside. What can I say? This is a poetry evening, not a political evening, or it's not even an evening, it's an afternoon. Hey-ho. Well, I'll do maybe two more, and I think that should be enough. I'm getting quite weary. Oh yes, I haven't read this one. This one is a seasonal one. It's called Revolting. Right. There are few things as revolting as pubic hair that's molting, as breasts that are sagging or legs that need lagging, as treading barefoot on a slug or after-party puke on your rug, as toenail clippings on an ashtray or house keys that have gone astray, as cat pee in your bath or dog poop on your path, as creatures squashed by cars or a bending workman showing his arse, as fag ends in congealed egg or an old crone showing too much leg, as teenage romances and Aussie soaps or TV adverts designed for dopes, as being told you're 65 and feeling old and half alive, as maggots in your cheese or dogs infested with fleas, as a lipstick Cupid's bow or a car that just won't go, as used condoms and seaborne STs or the scent of sewage on the breeze, as a woman who's a lush or Christmas shopping in a rush, as hairy warts on the nose or bunions on your toes, as hot flushes without warning or a man in the morning. Sorry, chaps. I don't know if I read the elephants, did I? Yes. This poem, I was very moved by how elephants in particular, quite probably some creatures like dolphins and other higher mammals. It's odd that we call things that are like us higher. Anyway, how like us elephants are, in that they seem to feel all the emotions we feel, and they certainly look after their children for as long as we do, and their life course, their history, unless interfered with by disaster or us, same thing, is more or less similar. Except that you can spot an elephant in musk quite easily, because teardrops come out of his eyes and he smells and he's very bad-tempered. Spotting a chap in musk is not quite so easy. Anyway, this is called Elephants. They came across the bones of one of their kind, bleached white in the sun, stark against ochre African soil. It was hot, their great ears flapped, frowned furrows formed along their trunks and foreheads and round their sad brown eyes. Matriarchs, daughters and sons inspected and sniffed. He was not of their tribe, this old bull elephant who died alone. No poacher had stolen his ivory, bleached white as in life. A young female lifted his tusk to her mouth, held delicately, tenderly, in pity for one of her kind. Great grey feet nudged the dead bones, trunks touched and gently lifted in dismembering, remembering this old dead bull. Each bone gently carried into the bush to be lost or hidden. Even calves dragged rib bones away from this place of death. He'd spread his seed, and they distributed his bones. Two young females pulled the skull, trunks through eye sockets into a gully, and distractedly they searched for more of him. And slowly they left, mother's trunks shielding the young. Elephants. My son Ben collected elephant statuettes, and when he died, I've kept them as a memorial to him. I do like elephants. They've got such a nice round shape. Nobody tells an elephant to lose weight, do they? I get fed up with being told, don't smoke, lose weight. Oh dear. You know, as you're getting old, the people who advise you as to keeping a healthy mind, if you lived giving up everything you're supposed to give up, there'd be no point in living. Frankly, anyway, enough of that. Oh, what shall I read now? I suppose we need a climax of some sort. Haven't had one of those for a long time. Can barely remember. Well, I suppose if I'm trying to keep a balance of countryside and psychology and thoughts and so on, in writing my poems, one way I thought of leaving something behind, as well as a life shared with other people and doing my best to help and love the people around me, and some I don't know. I think it's important that we can leave something behind. And yes, there are all the fossils and things like that, which will last for a long time after me, but they're not anything, these fossils. They're not part of me. I released them from their rock, identified them, grew to like them, like their shape and everything. But when you see these after I'm gone, they won't mean Alice. But my words are remaining in this book and on the internet. And I was quite amazed that people actually like some of the stuff I've written. And I compiled, I suppose, about 200 poems of a varying type. The ones I thought were better, or at least less bad than the others. And this book has been published, Be the Flame and Not the Moth. You can get it through contacting me at £15 or £10 if it's by hand. Anyway, I hoped to do some poetry gigs. I've done a few, but my poor health has meant it's been difficult. And I actually started writing some more poems. I think what it shows me is because I've had so much delight reading the words of others and hearing the words of others, that writing in itself is important. So I'll finish off with this poem, which is called Different Eyes. The people in Mesopotamia, that's the land between the Euphrates and the Tigris, were probably the first in the world to have a form of writing. They wrote in a cuneiform script. So, and their world was a very different world to ours in some ways, and very much the same in others. Anyway, this one poem is called Different Eyes. Embraced by the Euphrates and Tigris lies Mesopotamia, where the arts of civilization were brought. At Eridu was the Garden of Eden. All was harmony. A ziggurat to Inanna marks its religious centre. This, a stepped pyramid, is a remembered form, a shape seen from Egypt to Peru and Mexico. Were they of the same people, or are we all the same? Our minds holding primal memories, dream shapes, powerful, magical geometry? Round the city lay a 6-mile circuit of walls, stood 50 feet high, the height of 10 men. Were they giants then? Why do we feel so small still? And now it's all gone from these Euphrates plains, over-exploitation, an explosion of population, then starvation, Eden worked out by soil erosion. Like us, they gave nothing back to their mother the earth, which they plundered. Paradise ended. This Eden, now gone, a fragile paradise lost. How many miles to Eridu? It's our backyard. They left us alcohol, a Mesopotamian word, and an escape. Their city ended in the 3rd century after Christ, emptied after 5 millennia of continuous habitation. On a wall in the abandoned, deserted, dusty city is written, "The future is certain, whilst the past is imponderable." They knew mothers and daughters look to the world with the same eyes. We look at the same world with different eyes. Open your eyes to Eridu. Its present may reflect our future. Now, I think it's probably time to wind up. I hope you've enjoyed this. And I hope you'll write poetry. In my work as a counselling psychologist, I've sometimes asked a client to write their story as a poem. So, it did help several people. I think everybody has a story to tell or a thought to share. And I would be glad if people do write poetry. I know at school, poetry was stuff you had to learn and then recite, and it didn't actually mean a lot. Poetry is what I think makes us different to the animals. We all feel all sorts of emotions, but poetry is putting the crystalline pith of a subject or a feeling into a few words, like a song can. So, get writing, you poets, and I do hope you've enjoyed this session. There's more to come, inshallah. Take care.
day my finger touched a precious piece of history that evolved 100 million years ago. The remarkable remains of an egg that it is claimed came from a dinosaur so long ago. And this made me think of time, what a short time that we live, and breathe and sing and dance upon our land. So let us all be merry and enjoy each year we live, and remember we are mortal grains of sand. If we live to be 100, this is just a speck of time, a mere drop of rain or snow or puff of wind, in the everlasting vastness of a space that we call time. Our years upon this earth blow with the wind. Our years upon this earth blow with the wind.
That's your OBE.
That's right. Princess Anne actually invested me. I hadn't worn a vest that particular day, so it's just as well. There's
this
Princess
is...
Anne. Give me the gong.
And the fossils that we find are like jigsaws of our mind that build up history for us to see. If we look back to the past and know where we've come at last, we have evolved from one great family tree. So don't think yourself so old, keep in mind the words I've told you, and remember that our life's a grain of sand. And enjoy each year you live, it's a speck of time to give to the fossils in this world and on our land. If we live to be 100, this is just a speck of time, a mere drop of rain or snow or puff of wind, in the everlasting vastness of a space that we call time. Our years upon this earth blow with the wind. Our years upon this earth blow with the wind. Our years upon this earth blow with the wind.